Howdy you guys. Today we are going to make a scattering tool using the scriptable tools framework within Unreal that we can use to realistically scatter assets quickly into an Unreal scene for both games or cinematics or whatever your purpose is, instead of just having to go hand place everything. It can be a pain if you want things to fall differently. Kind of hard to get that look that we want. So here's a little demo of what we'll be making. We'll make this tool, and if we start simulating the tool, and we'll be realistically dropping, and we'll learn how to set up an array, and then we can go in and add a bunch of different assets to uh, place around the scene. So now it'll randomly place any of these. And if we want to get rid of this, now it's cups. So this is what we will learn how to make. We'll also learn how to save this so we can drag them to their scenes. So we have some examples over here that we have made. We will make these, and then you have individual control over all of these meshes, and then you can control everything. So let us get right into it. Okay, so now we're gonna go over like the logic that we're gonna use in this the physics dropper. So I think it's a lot easier and things run a lot smoother if you plan out physically what you want a tool to do before just jumping in and having no idea. So what we want to do is we want to be able to click somewhere, let's just say there, and we want a static mesh like a cube to spawn, and then we would like physics to simulate on it so it can fall and it can fall on the ground, right? So to do that, we can use a line trace. So a line trace is going to have a start and an end position, right? And then, there you go, runs a line trace between the two of them. So we want to be able to click and then run a line trace. So the start position for this can be like a camera, wherever our camera is. And then, like if this is our camera right here, then we would like to have the trace run out like a really far distance, say maybe like 5,000. Oh, that's a 5, guys, trust. 5,000. And then that will be our end position. So we can take wherever our camera is, take its direction, and then add a really big number. Doesn't have to be specifically, and that'll give us our end location. And then here, hopefully, whenever it hits something, if it hits a mesh inside of Unreal, then we want to spawn our object at this point right here. But if we spawn it right there, it's going to be inside of, like if it hits a cube, it's going to be inside the cube. Okay, so then we want to add units above it, so maybe like 100 or something. And then there we can spawn our cube or whatever mesh it is. So that'll spawn it above the ground, and then we can simulate physics on it so it can drop down to the ground. So this will be the base logic that we're going to use. Ignore my amazing artistic abilities, and then we're going to try and implement this inside of Unreal. Okay, so now that we are Unreal, we're going to do the Unreal side and make the tool itself. So I'm in Unreal 5.4 here, but the scriptable tools framework that we're going to be using was added in 5.2, I believe. So if you're in anything 5.2 plus, a lot of these same concepts should apply, and I think most of the node names are the exact same, so it should work for you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to edits and go to our plugins and search for scriptable and make sure that you have these two uh, plugins enabled, and then if you can click them on, it'll ask you to restart and then just restart your engine. So I'm going to go here and I'll just add a folder and we'll call this scattering tool. Go inside that folder. I'm going to right click and we'll go to editor utilities and we're going to make a editor utility blueprint. Then inside of these classes, just search for scriptable. And you'll see a few things, but as we were talking, we want this to go off of click. So we're going to click editor scriptable single click tool. Select that and then use whatever naming conventions you like, but we'll call this BP underscore scattering tool. Then we will open up this, and then sometimes there are like hidden or inherited variables, hidden variables inside of your blueprint. So click this gear and click show inherited variables, and then here's some of these like the name, the category. When you pull it up in the scriptable tools that we'll talk about later, a lot of these things will show up. So what we want to do, we want to go to our functions. We do not want to make a new function, sorry. We want to override, and then we want to do on hit by click. And then off of the hit by click, we want to, as you're talking, we want to run a line trace. We're going to drag out for here. We're going to do a line trace by channel, right? So as we were talking about, here is our start point, and then there's the end point. So as we were saying, we want the start point to be the click position, but we can't just drag this to, oh, we're running around this because they're not compatible because your click position is a ray structure. So from there, we need to drag out and we will do break input device ray. But we still can't just take this world array and drag it in because again, they're not comparable. So we will right click this and then split struct pin. This will give us our origin and then the direction, which that direction we'll use later as we're talking about. Then we'll just take this origin and we will plug it right into the start position. So now we have our start position figured out. I'll compile and save just so I don't lose anything. And then we will use this direction to get our end position. So we're gonna drag this out. And then as we were saying, we want to add a really big number to this. So when we get that end position, they'll be clicking and it'll shoot out forward and see if it's gonna hit some sort of geometry or wherever it is in the scene. So we're going to multiply here. And this gives us, a vector, but we don't need that. So we can just set this to a float. And then as we were saying, it can be a really big value, maybe like 5,000 or something really big. But this just gives us our direction. We need to add it to our origin because we could be moving around our map. It's not going to be in one step place. So we can drag this out, type add, plug this into here, and plug this to end. So this should be our base logic for the line trace. And to be able to check if it's working, we can go here. We can set our draw type to for duration, and then we can set our draw time to 3 just to check if it's working. We can go here. Okay, so now that we have this base logic, we need to be able to use it within our graph. So if you go and click the tool name, we can call it something, or you can go up to class defaults, and then there's all those, the tool settings that are over here. They're displayed over here. So we can call this our physics scattering tool. Then we compile and save. When we're back in our scene, the way to use a scriptable tool is you will go up here to the selection mode and you will go to scriptable tools. Then we will go here to the physics scattering tool, ignore the other one that I have up there. Then we will click. And here we see we're getting the real red debug wherever we're clicking. It's running a trace out and hitting that geometry. So that is the effect that we wanted. Okay, so now that we have our line trace logic, we're going to use that to spawn the static mesh that we would like. So to get the static mesh that we would like and to get that position, we can bring this out and go break hit result. If you hit this drop down, get a bunch of things, and then one of those is the location. So then to get our static mesh that we'd like to spawn, we can go here and we can go spawn actor from class. And then for our type, it will be a static mesh actor. And then we would like our spawn transform to be our location. But as we were saying, is if we just leave it like this, then it will just spawn it in the ground. So we need to add some z height to it, so it's spawning in the air, so then we can simulate physics on it and it will fall down. So we can drag out from that location, we can type in add, and then on the z we can add like 80 or something. And then we can plug that back into there, reorganize our graph a little bit so it's nice and clean. Pull this down here. So now we are taking that line trace, getting the location of wherever that line trace hits something, moving that location up 80 units, and then using that to spawn our static mesh actor. And then we're going to go from this, and we will go to set static mesh. Delete this. The target will just be itself. And then we can just test this out with maybe this sphere right here. Compile, we can save, and then we can go back, and then here's our physics tool. And then if we click, wow, we are spawning that sphere, and it's moving it up. So we could complete this here, delete these so it's not cluttering our scene. And then if we go back to our tool and we change this to something maybe like 180 to see that our logic is working, compile and save, go to our tool, click, see now it's spawning even further up. So if you're using a really big item or something that you want to spawn, you can increase that. Okay, so now we have the static mesh spawning, but we need to simulate physics on it. And to do that, first thing we need to do is we need to make sure it's movable. So we're gonna move this out. We'll drag this out and go to set mobility. We will change it to movable. We'll drag this out and plug it in here. So now it's not just static, it's actually movable. It can have physics simulated on it. And then just from here, we're going to go and type set simulate physics. We will drag this in as the target that we're simulating physics on, and we will say we would like it to simulate. So compile and save, go back, and to make sure we actually have physics running, we need to be simulating the game loop. So I have it already set to simulating up here, but you can just left click up here and set to simulate. Then we'll start simulating. Click on our tool, and then if we do this, it is falling down. Look at her go. So now that we have this base logic established with this test mesh, we need to figure out a way to have over here with like a variable that's an array, so we can choose which mesh is spawning here, and then I'll pick a random one out of those, and it'll spawn that mesh in our scene. So that's what we are going to do next. Okay, so to be able to get variables to show up here, it's kind of confusing. You need to create a separate blueprint class, and then we will be calling that inside of the tool, and that will be where our variables will be stored. I'm going to right click, create a blueprint class. Down here we're going to search scriptable, and then we have the scriptable interactive tool property. So I'm going to click that and go select. I'm going to call this VP underscore property set. Then inside of this, this is where all of the variables are going to be. So we're going to add a new one. We'll call it static meshes. I'm going to change it to a static mesh, make it an object reference, and we want it to be an array, so we'll right click it to turn it into an array. We will compile it. To be able to access these, you need to make sure that you click instance editable here on the right side. We'll click that, then we'll give it a default value. I have some assets I already made from a pre-created project, so we'll just throw in a bottle that I made. Okay, so that's everything on the property set side. So now we're going to go back into the tool. So we want to, over here, we're setting the mesh. We need to access that value from the property set. So to do that, we need to create a variable, and that variable will store the data from the property set. Also, we want them to be able to show up over here. When we click on the tool, we want them to show up on the left side here, so we can change what's in the array while we're using the tool. We don't have to go jumping back and forth. So to do that, we are going to go over here on the left side. We need a new event. event. So we're going to go event on script setup. So with this, we're going to drag it out and we're going to go add property set of type. And then that property set is going to be the one we just made, BP underscore property set. Then we're going to take this new property set and we are going to promote it to a variable. Then we will connect success to this, compile, and we will save. So now we have this property set variable. Let's see, scriptable interactive tool property set, and we will use that over here. So to use that, we will drag it out, get, and then we need to go, it is get editor property. The name of the property that we're going to get is from here, is the static meshes. I always just copy paste it so I don't have any typos. Paste it in here, plug this into here. Once we have that done, and then I'll plug this into here, move this over so I can slide this on in. Then we will return the property value into the new mesh. Then once we drag this into here, we need to, it should be an array, so we need to get a random array item. Then we will plug this into here, and then plug this into the new mesh. Sometimes it does this and it still thinks it's a float and not an array. So what you can do is you could just delete this if you come across this and delete the make array. And then we'll just go back, get your editor properties. It'll be this mesh. Then the name, we'll go back here, static mesh, paste that in, connect this up, connect this up. Move everything over. Probably use some rewrite nodes so this looks a lot more organized than it does right now. If we save it. And then if we go back here, we start simulating. We click on our tool. Right now it just has that bottle in there and it's spawning the bottle. And then we go here. We can add another mesh that I have. Then it's just the solo cup. And now it is randomly choosing one between the two of those. But now you will notice that if we stop simulating, they disappear. And we got to figure out a way so they don't disappear when we do that. So one thing real quick, I will go and turn off the line tracing debug because we know it works. There's going to be no debug. Compile and save. So now if you start simulating and you have this and you have your assets and maybe we add some cups in here. We look over here in the outliner. Yeah, here are all of the meshes that we dropped in. So what you're going to do is you're going to click the first one and you're going to shift click the last one to get all of them. You are going to go up to actor, then you're going to go merge actors and batch. So now that just hit them all, and then if you go up here to it created this blueprint actor called actor 0. You're going to click on that and then pull this back up. You're going to hit this little button right here next to the add, and then you don't need to change anything. You're just going to give it a new name. I'll call this blueprint underscore maybe scattered assets 01. Select, and then here all those assets are. Go back, again, stop simulating, so all these disappear. Now if we open this, all of the meshes that we had are stored as instanced static mesh. Instanced static meshes, ignore the glass on these are built for path tracing, so they're being a little dumb right now. But if we go out and get rid of the scriptable tools, if we drag this out, you're like, wait, where's it at? What you need to do is come over here to the location, go to 0, 0, 0, and there you go. There all of those meshes are. And you can go in there, and if you're like, you know what, I don't like this guy, you can get rid of it. Additionally, if we go back to the tool, start simulating, click on the tool, you start spamming around. You can go and you try and click on one of these, and you know, physics is still active, so you can drag these around. Maybe if I want to, you could have a table or something, right? And you wanted to knock a bunch of items out. You could drop a bunch of items, click on one of them, and then drag it off so it knocks all of them off, and then they fall onto the ground. So then you can, realistically scatter everything. You're not going there by hand and dropping everything so you can move it. I want to, hit some of these around or whatever. And then if we wanted to save these, we could do the same exact process that we did. Go over here, select all of our static mesh actors, go to Actor, Merge Actors, Batch, and that will make Actor 0 appear. Pull this up, click on that button again, and we'll call this one BP underscore scattered assets 02. Then we will select that. Here they are again. We will stop simulating so they disappear, drag this out, and zero her out again. What do you know? There are those meshes again. You're like, I really don't like this one. That went all the way over here. Or instant static meshes. You can just delete them. So that is the framework for this pretty basic scriptable tool. Um, there are a lot of things that you can go in and change to this. Maybe you have your array over here and you add a bunch of items, and right now it just randomly chooses one of them. Well, maybe you want it so you have a list of arrays, or no, a list of static meshes in this array, and you want to choose a specific one of them instead of just deleting everything and just having one. You could maybe go create another variable, and on right click, it changes through that variable, and then you're getting that index from the array instead of just a random one from the array. Or you could do it, you could add there's on hover, because right now we're just on click, so maybe when you're hovering around when the tool is active, it shows which static mesh is being displayed to drop. You could use the mouse scroll wheel to maybe change if you want to rotate it, so like these bottles, they're not falling perfectly up and down every time. You could change it so they rotate and they fall differently, but this should be just a really simple introduction to scriptable tools and something you can use to scatter things realistically in your screen, along with creating that separate property set and then calling those variables within. Because if you wanted to use more variables that showed up in here, you would just add those variables in there and then you would call them from the tool. You'd go in here, and when you're trying to get that property, if you had something called rotation value, maybe you had a rotation value of 0 to 360, and that's something you controlled in the sidebar over there. You could get editor property. If you could just change the property name to rotation value, and then you could uh, go from there within your blueprint. So I hope you guys found this helpful, and I hope you guys are able to make some really cool things with this.